Hello, everybody. Welcome to your Muckboots in the Capitol update for small farm legislative concerns in Oregon. This is your update for June 9th, 2025, and this is the second to last update that we will be giving before the end of the session. Our last update will be on June 16th, and then we will, of course, be doing a session wrap-up and all of the what passed in the session, what does that mean for you kind of content during July and August as well. But next week, June 16th, will be our last weekly update because the sine die is imminent, and we'll talk about that later in the presentation. My name is Alice Morrison. I am the co-executive director of Friends of Family Farmers, and I am in charge of our policy work. 1 second. All right, so today we are going to be discussing the FOF priority updates, our two priorities that have carried us all the way through this session. We will touch on some other priorities. We have some updates on some bills that we've supported throughout the session that have substantially changed in this 11th hour. So we wanted to give you all a heads up about that. Just go over the timeline for the rest of the session. We are very close to the end. And we're going to talk about one of our rulemaking processes that we are a part of, which is part of FOF's other advocacy work outside of the legislative session. But the reason that this RAC exists is because it originated in a legislative working group. And so it's part of the discussion as we move forward. Great. So we'll go straight into FOF priority updates. I give the same update on this bill every week because we moved very, very early in session with this bill that we worked with ODA to introduce in the House Ag Committee to add 2 FTE over the next biennium for inspectors for the Oregon State Meat Inspection Program. The purpose of this bill is to give more capacity to ODA to meet the demand for small and mid-sized independent producers who want to use a state inspected meat processing facility. Because of the bottlenecks that we've experienced over the last couple decades here in Oregon, with USDA processing and the lack of options for bringing meat legally to market across the state. The state has invested quite a bit of time, money, and energy getting the cooperative agreement with USDA set up, giving grants to facilities to open their doors. And because of some different budget shenanigans over the last couple of years, the FTE needed at the department, so the staff time needed at the department to fully ensure that the inspectors are present so that all these facilities can run, was not included in the continuing service level budget. So we had to ask for it. So the fiscal is about for $275,000. So that's the price tag of this bill. For each biennium, the fiscal impact statement does cover the 25 to 27 biennium and the 27 to 29 biennium. So you can, if you go into OLIS and you see that there are 2 different numbers. But in the scheme of things, this is not that much money for the state budget, but we're having a really interesting budget year. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But the path that this one has walked down was a really early hearing, probably in the second week of session, I think. Very grateful to the committee for prioritizing this bill, passed unanimously out of the committee. We have not heard any opposition on this bill, continued to this date. It was referred to Ways and Means because it requires money. It sits there now. It was identified as a priority bill from the House Ag Committee. All of the policy committees were able to give the Ways and Means co-chairs and subcommittee chairs a list of things that they sent to that committee by passing it out of their committee, that's their top 10, essentially, saying, hey, these are the things that we think are the most important. And this bill made it onto that list. We're very grateful for the support of the committee and the co-chairs there, because this is a really straightforward way to close the loop and provide needed services to farmers across the state. So yeah, look out for ways to get involved. We are pretty much at the end of session, but I'm not ruling out a last minute action alert in the next couple of weeks if things go very awry. All right, so small farm water access 3372. What's in the bill? So there are some amendment numbers in here that are kind of no longer relevant because of what's on the next slide. But essentially, what's in the bill is that in existing law, you could irrigate a half acre for personal use, anything you wanted for personal use. We were not allowed to sell anything that came off of it. You were also allowed to use 5,000 gallons per day. for any single commercial or industrial purpose, as long as that commercial purpose was not commercial irrigation. This bill allows you to use your irrigation or use your half acre for commercial or personal gardening. So you could sell things that come off of it, in part or whole. It could be the whole thing. It could be a little bit of it, but you are allowed to use 3,000 gallons per day for irrigation on that half acre, regardless of whether it's commercial or personal. So, and that whatever you use for irrigation plus whatever you use for that single commercial or industrial use has to add up to 5,000 gallons. So within the current gallon limits of current exemptions, you are now allowed to use 3,000 gallons per day for irrigation on your half acre for commercial or personal purposes. This is the first time that you've been able to sell anything that comes off of that. So cannabis is excluded. And the Lower Umatilla Basin groundwater management area is also excluded until a sunset in January of 2028. That was at the request of the Soil and Water Conservation District in that area, saying, hey, we are dealing with nitrate contamination. There is a mitigation plan in place. We'll talk about whether or not that's working in a later slide, but they don't want any new factors in that particular groundwater management area to consider until they've gotten a little further in the process. So we were very, very happy to honor that request from that community and exclude them until the sunset in 2028. So this bill, it had a hearing in its first committee, the House Ag Committee, in April 7th, work session April 9th, passed out of the House Ag Committee, passed out of the House floor, went to the Senate Committee, had a couple of hearings in the Senate Natural Resources Committee. The Lub Guama amendment was adopted. It passed unanimously out of the Senate Natural Resources Committee, and it passed completely. So it passed its Senate floor vote with only one oppositional vote, which is wild, complete, not bipartisan support except for one individual. That passed at the end of May. It passed its House concurrence vote on May 29th, not 39th. There is no May 39th. And the Speaker of the House and Senate President signed it last week. It has now, the text has now been enrolled, and it is on the governor's desk awaiting signature. So this bill has passed. The implementation is that, okay, there we go. So there will be some joint community efforts between us, and we anticipate OWRD and Soil and Water Conservation Districts and all the folks who helped us get there, Granges, other community groups who supported this, including like Water League and Plug and all of the folks, and OFMA and all of the folks who came to speak at the hearings and helped us get where we are. We are going to be looking to have you all help us spread the word on this between now and January 1, because this bill goes into effect January 1. So we want to help everyone get all the facts and set themselves up for success in 2026. So look out for more information there, and we will be pursuing all educational opportunities. So there'll be stuff from us, stuff from partners. We will try to get in some educational programming together for OSU programming, like Small Farms School in September and Small Farms Conference next February. So watch out for that. Really excited about this. Thank you. Thank you so much to everyone who spoke up about this when it first started becoming a problem. The law that was an issue has been on the books since 1955, but it has not been enforced in any kind of consistent fashion or outside of complaints since that time. So a lot of people were taken aback and caught unawares in 2023 when this became an enforcement priority. Thank you to all the farmers who came to us and expressed their deep concerns about this and helped us find a solution. Thank you to everyone who came to our community meetings around the state. We held 20 community meetings around the state with over 600 people coming out to tell us what they thought about this problem and what they thought the solution should be. Thank you to the legislators who listened and stood with us, especially Representative Owens and Helm, who were the co-chairs of the House Ag Committee that really got the ball rolling on this and really stood up for this as a priority for them and helped us get legislators of all affiliations to vote on the merits of the issue and not along party lines. And this has had a lot of bipartisan support, and we're very proud of that. Thank you for everyone who gave expert advice on this bill. We reached out to a lot of stakeholders and a lot of folks who had the expertise to weigh in on responsible water management, how much is enough for production on a half acre. All of these things went back and forth several times. Lots of numbers were discussed for this bill. Thank you for all of the experts who helped us get to this point. And thank you for everyone who submitted testimony. I didn't put it on the list, but hundreds of people submitted testimony on the record for this bill. And that level of community support and just a really strong, consistent message from the community that this was not fair, not right, and not in line with our natural resource or community food system goals for Oregon is the reason that this bill passed. So thank you so much. All right. So in other priorities, the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the budget priorities. So these are all the things that we included in our budget letter, which is the document that we circulated to all of our legislative partners on Ways and Means, who are in leadership, who are on Ways and Means subcommittees, to make sure that they knew what we thought are the most important things for the community food system in Oregon this year. It's a very tight funding year. The budget forecast that was released on May 14th had a deficit of about $755 million from where we thought it would be. That is significant. And that means that funding for programs that are not contained within the continuing service level of a state agency is going to be challenging. And so we have really been working with our partners and being very clear with legislators that we think these are the things that will make the biggest difference. So of course we have our HB 2164, the state meat inspection FTE, that we think should have been included in the ODA continuing service level, but was not due to restrictions that came down from the top. And we understand, but at the same time, this program needs to function effectively. Like there's been way too much investment from the state, too many promises made to farmers, and too much anticipation of this program really changing the landscape for farmers and ranchers across the state, that we can't let it fall on its face at the end of the line. We also have been very active with our partners at OCFSN, OFMA, and ORCAN, and FMF, working on the Food System Resilience Grant Funds package, and that is HB 2979. These are the grants for food hubs, small farmers and ranchers, and farmers markets that are contained at the Oregon Community Food Systems Network and at the Oregon Farmers Market Association to help them deal with disaster and climate change resilience across the state. This program was instituted in 2023 with an allocation from the state, and we're seeking a renewal of funds to keep those programs going so that we can make all of our small farms and ranches more resilient and less vulnerable to climate-driven disaster, as well as not needing those relief funds because we can protect our crop. We can get our livestock out of the path of a wildfire. We can do what needs to be done to preserve the local food system infrastructure that keeps our communities resilient in these times of chaos, without having to go back and put a Band-Aid on it after the fact. So really excited about that package. Been working very diligently with all of the groups in that coalition. And thank you to the hundreds of people who've also signed on to that letter. We have been a big supporter of Food for All because we do believe that when people have enough to eat, our rural economies, our just everybody in the community prospers, and everybody can live a thriving life. So that's a basic one for us. We have been very supportive of that and involved in the campaign from the beginning. Double Up Food Bucks is the SNAP matching program, DUFBA, at farmers markets, as well as some grocery stores, farm stands, CSAs. DUFBA does a lot, and it's administered by our friends at the Farmers Market Fund, and it is contained in the Oregon Department of Human Services budget. I do believe that budget has passed out and continuing service level was maybe granted. I will double check on that. But we need to see where the numbers end up. Farm to School is also contained in the ODA and ODE budgets. Those budgets have also moved through the process, and we'll give you an update on that next week, as well as OAHP, the Oregon Ag Heritage Program, which helps farm conservation planning and succession planning and helps pay for conservation easements to keep farmland in production and take it take development rights off the table so that our farmlands can continue to feed us. OAHP, I know, was included at the continuing service level in the OWEB budget. It was not given the bump that was requested in HB 3131, but the continuing service level for both the grant programs and the administration of that program were in the OWEB budget, and we're very excited to see that program move forward. Whoops. All right, so if they were not on that list, or if they are on that list, there's kind of two ways that this can go for bills that are in Ways and Means right now. They can either be assigned to a subcommittee, which should happen anytime now. I know I said that last week too, but you know, things are moving the way that they're moving at the legislature. And if your bill is assigned to a subcommittee, that is a very good sign, because they are not going to waste time having a hearing on something that is not going to move forward. At this point in the session, they need to get to it. And so if your bill becomes assigned to a subcommittee, our bills would likely be assigned to the subcommittee on natural resources. That's usually where ag and food system things end up. And if those are assigned, we would take that as a good sign that they have been preordained to pass. It's not a guarantee, obviously, but that means that your funding could pass as its individual bill. But there's another path. The budget reconciliation bill, sometimes called the Christmas tree bill, is a bill that is worked on pretty much behind closed doors at the legislature. And unlike at the federal level, states are mandated to balance their budgets every legislative session. So that's what the budget reconciliation bill does, is it takes all of the other requests and parses out the funds that are left and says, hey, this is what the state is going to spend money on for the next biennium. And so that means that they could take out pieces of programs from bills that are out there that maybe the whole bill isn't going to pass, but they're going to pick up a piece of it, or they're going to take that and just squeeze down the number of dollars that are being assigned to it and put that into the budget reconciliation bill instead of passing the bill as it stands. So that is something that could happen to our bills, HB 2164, our meat processing bill, or that HB 2979, the food system resilience grant funds bill. So that one in 2023, that was passed through the budget reconciliation bill. It wasn't a standalone bill. So we won't know what's in this bill until it's drafted, and it should come out sometime. There is not a huge guarantee that we'll have a lot of notice on this. It's not something that the public really gets to weigh in on very much. So that's why you may be receiving some action alerts about, it's time to let your representative know your representative is on the Ways and Means Committee, and they need to know that you care about this so that it can be included in the budget reconciliation bill, because there's not really a path for us as members of the public to weigh in once that's drafted. Okay. Sorry, I'm speeding on through. I want to make sure we get to everything and have time for some questions. But other bills that we've been watching throughout the session, HB 2548 is the, or is it 2458? I'm sorry. It's the Farm Worker Labor Standards Board bill that PCUN and Immigrant Justice have been putting together. There have been substantial changes to this bill. There was a hearing last week in Senate Rules, or House Rules for this bill. And it is now a study on farm worker conditions and treatment commissioned, to PSU. It's very specific language. Sometimes we refer to study bills as placeholder bills, but this is not a placeholder bill. This is like very much the intention of the bill is to get definitive data on what is happening with farm worker labor standards, working conditions, all of those kinds of things, because a lot of the conversation around this bill is like, is this really necessary? Are there places where farm workers are not being heard? There is a lot of data to suggest that, but there hasn't been this specific study done in Oregon before. And so that's what the pivot was made to focus on getting all of the information before further changes can be made. This is something that the coalition who drafted the bill is in support of, and something that we have been asked if we would have folks participate in the studies if the bill passes, and we said yes. We would love to have our farmers' voices included, and the farm workers in our network. We think that more information is a good idea. The fiscal for this is around $600,000. It's yet to be seen whether that will be funded through the budget reconciliation process, but it's yet to be seen if anything will. So we're all on the same page. All right. And the other bill that I wanted to touch on right now is something that we discussed at our lobby day back in March. On March 4th, we had our Small Farms Mean Business lobby day. And this 1154, you heard from Caleb Lay from Oregon Rural Action at our event on March 4th. And this is the governor's bill regarding the designation and management of water quality concern areas and groundwater quality management areas. So we talked a little bit about the Lubguama earlier in this presentation, but the Lower Umatilla Basin groundwater management area is what it's a groundwater management area, and that's a legal designation, and it triggers certain things with DEQ and other state agencies to try to clean up that area and address the contamination that's happening in the groundwater. This bill would have created they would have changed groundwater management area to groundwater quality management area and created a different water quality concern area. And the original draft of the bill that is on OLIS right now has some stronger language about requiring some mandatory action for industry and individuals if the higher designation is reached. And some things that the community wasn't, didn't think went far enough, but there was some mandatory action included in it. The most recent draft removes pretty much all of that mandatory action. And according to the local community in the Lubguama, it will not address their concerns. There have been a lot of conversation in the legislature over the last couple of years about whether or not or how we address the water quality problems in the Lower Umatilla Basin, and whether this is a statewide management problem or an individual area management problem. And the local community says the most recent draft does not go far enough, and they have withdrawn their support for the bill. So FOF is moving to a neutral position on this bill, and because it does not do harm, but it does not fix the problem. And we stand with that community. And there's a hearing later today, and we will be submitting some written comments during that time. Look out for more. Disappointing to see the meaningful portions of that bill being stripped away, but that has been a long-running problem in the state. So these are the dates of concern for the last half of the session. Sorry, I'm going so quickly through this. We just only have 5 minutes left. So the second chamber deadlines were May 9th and May 23rd. Those have come and gone. So our policy committees have stopped meeting at this point. Their work is done. May 14th is when that revenue forecast came out, and that's when Ways and Means really took up the mantle and said, okay, we know how much money we have to make it work. June 18th is the target sine die. I have been told that we should not anticipate that happening. So June 29th is the constitutional sine die. The sine die is just the Latin term for when the session has to end. So sometime between June 18th and June 29th, the session has to end. So given the pace that they're working at right now, it could be any time in between then. I don't anticipate that it will be the 18th at this point, but it still could be. They have not announced an official sine die, but they have suspended some rules saying that the sine die is imminent. So we are hoping for the best. All right, just to touch on the Farm Stand Rulemaking Advisory Committee really quickly. The Farm Stand Rulemaking Advisory Committee came from a bill that was produced by the Oregon Property Owners Association. I believe it was 3133, HB 3133. And there were a lot of things in there that they convened a legislative working group with the House Ag Committee that FOF was asked to be a part of, so I participated. And there were 5 things that really rose to the top that people were saying could be addressed through rulemaking, not through statutory change. So these 5 things, yes, primary use test, is the activity still farming rather than tourism? Promotional activities outside and inside the farm stand building, activities that promote the sale of farm products, farm operation or agriculture, on-farm education is kind of wrapped into that. Prepared foods with a direct tie to the farm operation and local agricultural area, and impacts on neighboring farms. And so those are the things being discussed by the Rulemaking Advisory Committee. And those are the things that we want to hear from you about. So FOF has been convening these, we're calling them office hours, to talk about these topics so that we can represent your voices in the Rulemaking Advisory Committee. I've been appointed to the committee and can speak on behalf of our FOF community. On the 21st rather, we had our primary use test, non-farm products, what is local, all of that kind of discussion. Last week, we discussed fee-based activities, both promotional and educational, and whether or not those can occur inside or outside farm stand buildings. Next week, we will be discussing prepared foods and the cumulative impact on neighboring farms and properties. And then July 14th, we will be discussing kind of any remaining comments, wrapping it all together. And so if you have comments on any of these and you missed those discussions, put July 14th on your calendar and you can come talk to me about them then. There is an opportunity for public comment during this process. You don't have to go through me as a Rulemaking Advisory Committee member. They are holding space in the Rulemaking Advisory Committees for public comment. So on the next one is going to be on June 24th, and then there's going to be one on July 18th. So if you are interested in making public comment during those times, you can check out the Department of Land Conservation and Development rulemaking page, DLCD's rulemaking page on their website, and they are required to post those public meetings. So you can get all of the information about how to tune in and give your public comment then. It does not go on to the permanent public record if you do it that way. So if you would like to put permanent public record comments on, there will be, so the RAC finishes up in July. They will do a legal review to make sure this is rulemaking and not statutory change. And then the draft rules will be released in September, and there will be a public comment period on the draft rules September 25th-ish to early November. So if that is something that you're interested in, look out for notifications from FOF. We'll probably have an info session to help folks understand what the rules are actually saying and parse out the legalese, and get more comments going. So look out for that and stay tuned. All right. Well, it is exactly, well, it's 12:29.